Going to hear a conversation between an agent and Scott. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
Howdy, what can I do for you?
I'm here to ship some things back to China.
OK, we can do that. Shipping things back, eh? Have you lived there before?
Yeah, I lived there for 3 years and came back 2 years ago. Now I'm going back to start my own business.
Really? Did you ship things with us last time?
No, I used a Chinese shipping agency.
Well, I'll just let you know that rates have changed recently. So I don't know if they'll be comparable to what you paid before.
It doesn't matter to me. My company's paying for it.
Aha, then it's nothing off your skin, right? OK, I'll need your name and where you need to go to pick up the items to be shipped.
My name is Scott Linder, Linder, and I live in upstate New York, Saratoga Springs.
Oh, sure, I know that place. I go to the races there. Great town. What's the zip there again?
770425. And the street address is 412 West Lake Road.
770425 Westlake, got it. And how big of a container are you going to be looking for?
Well, I didn't have a container last time, and I don't think I'll need one this time. I think that I'll have about 6 cubic meters.
We can get a subsection of a container then.
How big is that?
It's 2 meters wide and 3 meters long.
2 meters high, right?
Yes, sir.
Now look at questions 6 to 10. As the talk continues, answer questions 6 to 10.
And for customs, I need to know what sort of items will you be shipping?
Mostly furniture. But we'll also have quite a few boxes of books too.
Any clothing?
Nope, but we'll have some bicycles and wood that we use for a loft bed.
Be careful with those bicycles. I hear bicycle theft is a big problem in China.
Not if you know how to secure your bikes and where to store them.
Well, good luck. How valuable do you want me to list the entire shipment as being?
Let's say about $3,500.
Great. Now you'll also have to go over to the customs department to check with them about shipping the wood over to China. I know there are concerns about termites, bugs, etc.
No problem. It's the same wood I brought over from China last time.
Then you should be okay. It's just a formality. And last of all, where would you like the shipment to be delivered?
Well, I will live in Beijing, but let's ship it to Tianjin. My company will pick it up there.
That's all right then. Have a nice trip.
Thanks for your help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a tour guide talking to her tour group. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Well, we certainly have a busy day ahead of us, so let's get started, shall we? You'll find a map of the museum with the itinerary I've just handed out. The museum's our first port of call, so let's have a look at the map now. The door on the right of the entrance hall leads into the gift shop and ticket centre. Once we pick up our entrance tickets, I'd ask everyone to deposit their bags and coats in the cloakroom, which is located towards the back of the gift shop and ticket centre. If you want to pick up an information leaflet, you can approach the information desk situated along the right-hand side. Now, once you come back into the entrance hall, the door on the opposite side to the gift shop leads into the art gallery. There is a special exhibition on there at the moment which is not to be missed. If you continue on up the entrance hallway, that leads into the main exhibition centre. At the back left-hand side, there are some toilets. Beside the toilets, you'll find the 3D theatre. I strongly recommend that you make time for the 30-minute presentation in the theatre. It is well worth a viewing. Running along the right-hand side of the main exhibition centre is the Modern Art Studio. Here, not only can you view some of the most famous works of the 20th century, but you can also sit in on a workshop run by a local artist. So, that's the Art Museum.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Next on the itinerary is the aquarium. Depending on how long we spend at the museum, we might have to give this one a miss. It's not what I'd call a highlight of the day, but it would be a shame if we didn't get to see it, as it's en route to the Solheim Country Club, where we're booked in for lunch at 1 o'clock. Originally, we had planned to stop off at the Milltown Winery afterwards, but we've had to scrap that plan. Otherwise, we'd never get to the Zoological Gardens before closing time. We have pre-booked the gardens and must be there by 2:30, so no dilly-dallying please after lunch. Straight back onto the bus. The gardens close at 3:30, so we've an hour there, which should give us ample time to look around. Time allowing, we'll stop off at the famous Stout Brewery after that, if traffic isn't too heavy, and we're in Lincoln before 5. If not, we'll head straight for the National Concert Hall, where you're in for a real treat of an evening, with a performance from the world-renowned cellist, Andrei Borovsky. We have to be in our seats by 6:30 sharp. After that, it's back to the hotel for the night, where a buffet meal will be waiting for us at 8:30, or whenever we get back.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between Helen and her tutor.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Come in. Ah, it's you, Helen. What can I do for you?
Well, it's about that essay on non-verbal communication. I'd like a bit of advice, if that's all right.
By all means. That's what I'm here for. How can I help you?
It's about that survey you asked us to carry out about body language.
Oh, yes. I asked you to investigate what sort of touching is permissible between friends of the same sex and friends of the opposite sex.
That's it. And then you wanted us to go on to compare the answers we obtained from people from our own culture with the answers of people from other cultures.
Well, that shouldn't be too difficult. There are students here from dozens of cultures, including Asia and the Middle East. Go and ask them.
That's the problem. I'm not sure how to word the questions.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Go and ask them.
That's the problem. I'm not sure how to word the questions. I think I've got far too many. People don't want to be bothered answering them all.
Is that the list of questions you have with you? Let's have a look. I see. Your basic idea is fine. You've got a checklist of the parts of the body we mostly use to touch people with, and a checklist of the parts of other people's bodies that we usually touch. But you don't have to go right through the list asking a separate question about each item. You can make your questionnaire much shorter if you ask open questions.
Open questions? What are they?
Sometimes we call them WH questions. What, when, where. Those are examples.
Oh, I see. Yes, we learned about them in grammar. I hadn't realised how useful they'd turn out to be. I could just ask one open question about each subject and tick the answers I receive.
That's right. Now, let's have a look at the list of parts of the body you're going to ask about. I see. You've got the head, arm and hand, and, oh, it's over the page, the back, leg and foot. What about the shoulder and the thigh? They're important areas, and there are some others you should include too.
Oh, yes, of course. I was in a rush and forgot those. What about asking people how they feel about being touched? Surely it's hard for people to put that sort of feeling into words.
Yes, you're right. That's why it's essential to work out a rating scale for each response.
Can you tell me a bit about how to use rating scales?
Well, there's no way to measure how strongly a person feels about something, of course. All we can go on is what they report about their feelings. So what we do is offering them choices of ways to express how they feel. Very strongly, strongly, or not at all. That would be an example of a rating scale. In this case, as your survey is only a small trial sample, I suggest you use that 3-point rating scale I've just described. Very strongly, strongly, or not at all. That'll be enough to enable you to draw some broad conclusions. You may go on to refine your survey later if you decide to specialise in the study of non-verbal aspects of behaviour.
Thank you. I'm much clearer now. Could I ask you one last question? I'm afraid I've got a brain like a sieve, but I just can't remember the technical term you told us for the study of touch. It sounded like happy, but of course it isn't.
Oh, you mean haptics. Haptics.
Of course, haptics.
That's it. Happy to be of service.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear some facts and figures about Australia.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Now I should tell you that the country of Australia is made up of 6 states and 2 territories. These are the Australian Capital Territory, New South Wales, the Northern Territory, Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, and Western Australia. The national capital is Canberra. Right, let's turn to the Australian economy. Australia has a prosperous Western-style capitalist economy. Australia is a major exporter of agricultural products, minerals, metals, and fossil fuels. Commodity prices have a big impact on the economy. Australia suffered from the low growth and high unemployment typical of the OECD countries in the early 1990s, but the economy has expanded at reasonably steady rates in recent years. In addition to high unemployment, short-term economic problems include how to balance output and inflation and how to stimulate exports. The economy is made up like this: agriculture, 3.1%, industry, 27.7%, services, 69.2%. The labor force has a similar pattern. The total labor force is 8.2 million. 34% work in finance and services, 23% work in public and community services, 20% work in the wholesale and retail trade, 17% work in manufacturing and industry, and 6% work in agriculture. What are the chief industries of Australia? They are mining, industrial, and transport equipment, food processing, chemicals, and steel. What are Australia's main agricultural products? They are wheat, barley, sugarcane, fruit, cattle, sheep, and poultry. And who do we sell our products to? At present, our chief export market is Japan, which takes 24% of our exports. After that, South Korea takes 8%, and New Zealand and the U.S. each take 7%. In years to come, however, we expect China to become a significant trade partner. China already supplies 5% of Australia's imports. This is the same amount as New Zealand. Meanwhile, we take 1/5, in fact 22% of our imports from the U.S., 17% from Japan, and 6% from the UK. So what sort of things does Australia import? Well, we import a lot of machinery and transport equipment, especially computers and office machines, also telecommunications equipment, and in addition we have to import oil and petroleum products. So let's move to the subject of communications in Australia. We have an estimated 8.7 million telephones and 9.2 million televisions. There are some 134 television broadcast stations and 325 radio stations. The related subject of transport is naturally very important in such a big country as Australia. Let's look at highways first. There are 2 kinds of highways, paved and unpaved. Paved highways are regular roads with a permanent surface. But actually, we have more unpaved highways, around 60%, than paved. when all the country roads are included. In addition, Australia has a railway network of over 38,000 kilometers. But you'll probably find it hard to believe how many airports we've got. 10? 20? 50? No, the total is 443. Of course, this includes many short runways on farms and in the outback. There are only 9 airports with runways of more than 3,000 meters.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.